Hi, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio, joined by sports director Kevin Suits. Breaking news into the newsroom over the course of the last hour. And Kevin, reportedly that is Trev Alberts, Nebraska athletic director, is leaving Nebraska to accept the athletic director position at Texas A&M. Monumental news for the university.
Yeah, keyword there is reportedly. This is not confirmed by either side, Nebraska or Texas A&M at this moment, Bill, but there are some very credible news outlets that are reporting that Trev Alberts was a target for the Texas A&M athletic director job. Sounds like they've been in some very quiet negotiations and talks, and I think you're not alone if you're a Nebraska fan and you're very skeptical of the whole thing at first, saying like, why? How would this happen? But as momentum builds here on Wednesday morning, it sounds like all signs point to Trev Alberts accepting this job. Again, there is nothing official from either side, but there is considerable evidence behind this potentially being sewn up here, whether today or tomorrow.
And this was first reported by the Houston Chronicle. Again, at first we kind of thought, is this an early April Fool's joke? But again, Houston Chronicle first reported this, and now multiple other outlets online again are reporting this. And again, some of the big name outlets, again, we're still working, like you said, to kind of confirm this news ourselves. The Texas A&M athletic director position open because former Nebraska president Ted Carter hired away Ross Bjork, the A&M athletic director.
Yeah, so both Carter and Bjork are currently at Ohio State. So Texas A&M is seeking a new athletic director. I guess one of the biggest questions I would have, and I'm not the only one, is why would Trev Alberts leave for Texas A&M? Of course, he was an All-American football player at the University of Nebraska. He's done numerous notable things as the AD at his alma mater, including helping with Volleyball Day in Nebraska. He hired Matt Rule, and one of the reasons Matt Rule came to Nebraska was because of the leadership, Ted Carter and Trev Alberts. Carter has already departed. Trev Alberts may be departing as well, so that's a whole other conversation that we may get into as the future of Matt Rule. And then also, Trev, just last fall, he signed a new contract. So he's under contract through, I believe, 2032. And he set forth the plan to renovate Memorial Stadium, which is a massive undertaking. So should he leave and a new athletic director need to be hired, this would be a huge endeavor, not only from a fundraising perspective, but also to see this thing to completion. Because when that was announced, I believe back in October, it was pretty substantial news, and there were a lot of questions regarding it. But Trev Alberts had that vision to take Memorial Stadium into, the next generation. And he was going to make changes to South Stadium. He was going to adjust the concourse, so many things, and that's kind of his brainchild.
And one of the things that I think a lot of people have said he's very good at is raising money. He helped with the finishing the Go Big project, again, the new football facility. This was his next big thing, and lots of question marks now come up as to how they're going to raise, I think it against $450 million, I think is what it was, for this stadium expansion. So yeah, and again, on top of that, right now, Nebraska still is working under an interim president, and you have to wonder if some of the questions surrounding, some of those vacancies led to this departure.
I think that's the point, Bill, that we can't gloss over. Nebraska's president, that position, it has been open for 7 months. So if you're looking for a reason in which why did Trev Alberts potentially leave, again, we're using all these journalistic words to make sure we're not saying anything is final because we don't know that at the moment. But Nebraska's Trev's boss has been an interim for 7 months. So there hasn't been action in terms of filling that president job. And maybe that would make, I think anybody else, if you're unsure what's going to happen above you in terms of the leadership, it maybe makes you
uncomfortable,
think twice about things, and question potentially what the future holds. I don't know that Trev Alberts wanted to leave, but maybe the situation that he's currently in, there were some frustrations, or maybe he just wants to chase something bigger. I mean, it's it's pretty obvious that there's a lot of money that is kicked around down in the state of Texas, and especially at Texas A&M. Look at the Jimbo Fisher's contract.
$70 million buyout. And they paid it. They paid
the $70 million buyout. So finances probably have to play into the discussion at some point in time for Trev Alberts. And I would think that Texas A&M has a pretty open pocketbook. Mm-hmm. And they could probably go after any athletic director candidate they want. And seeing what Trev Alberts has done over the course of 3.5 years at Nebraska, he would be an appealing candidate, not just at Texas A&M, but at about any Power 5 university across the U.S.
And again, the reason why it's so unexpected is because, Texas A&M's had this position open, and there's been other athletic director positions that have been open over the course of the last however many months or whatever. Trev Alberts' name has never been, floated out there or on a list somewhere, because you'd have to think, hey, this is a guy, he's at his alma mater. He's got his football coach that he hired that seems to have things going on the right track. Basketball programs seem to be moving forward on the right track, both men's and women's, set for NCAA tournament bids. Baseball seems to be kind of going the right way. Everything, volleyball is volleyball. In terms of the athletics that he's directing, everything is going pretty well right now.
Yeah, and the timing is really unfortunate for the basketball programs because they are having a historically successful season. And Fred Hoiberg's team has 22 wins, named Big Ten Coach of the Year just yesterday. And there's so much momentum for the men's basketball program that they're going to the Big Ten tournament later this week, and they pretty much have an NCAA bid already locked up. Selection Sunday is this week. And for Amy Williams, Selection Sunday is this week. And now there's some instability, potentially, above Fred Hoiberg. So that could be unnerving. Not to mention, we've seen Trev's presence inside Pinnacle Bank Arena throughout this season. Not just the men's games, but the women's games. And we've seen on multiple occasions Trev sitting, he's about 15 feet from the Nebraska bench. And beside him is either John Cook or Jalen Reyes or some of his former teammates at Nebraska, Dylan Raiola. They've moved Dylan from the student area, and because of all the autograph requests and just everybody that wants a little opportunity to meet Dylan Raiola, they've moved him out of the stands, and the safe space for him was to sit next to Trev Alberts on the floor.
It was one of those things where it's like a recruit sitting next to the athletic director on the floor at a basketball game, which again just spoke to the how big Dylan Raiola was.
But again, Bill, this all highlights how massive this news is, because the needle for Nebraska athletics is pointing so far in the right direction with men's and women's basketball. The baseball team is off to a great start right now, where they're in the top 5 in the RPI. Matt Rule is hired, and they bring in one of the best recruits in the 2024 signing class in Dylan Raiola. And the NIL space seems to be going in a positive direction. The volleyball team just went to the national championship match. Everything is positive. But yet somebody wants to leave that. Mm-hmm. And that somebody runs the entire operation. And that somebody is a Nebraskan. Well, he's an Iowan who came. We can say he's a Nebraskan because he does live here. Mm-hmm. He played at the University of Nebraska, and he came back to be the athletic director. And before being at Nebraska, he was at UNO, and that's where he started his career in athletic administration.
So again, if you're just hopping on, just joining us, haven't seen the news, again, the big news in this morning, first reported by the Houston Chronicle, and that is that Trev Alberts, Nebraska athletic director, is reported to be leaving Nebraska for the same position at Texas A&M. And again, just huge, massive shakeup. And again, just something that no one really saw coming. So Alberts, again, you just mentioned it, a Nebraska alum, All-American football player, just signed new contract in November, making $1.7 million. That was supposed to go up to just north of $2 million by the in just a couple years. Nebraska losing President Ted Carter not long ago to Ohio State. Former President Ted Carter at Ohio State hires Ross Bjork, who was the athletic director at Texas A&M, and that's how this position has come to be open.
Trev Alberts, because of the contract that he signed back in November, his buyout is over $4 million. So he would owe the university upwards of $4 million should he take the Texas A&M job and leave the University of Nebraska. And man, like I wonder, what does the hiring process even look like for Nebraska? You know, you can't hire an athletic director without hiring a president. I guess you could, but would you take a job not knowing who your boss would be? That would be a pretty backwards way to navigate that space. So that even it emphasizes how important it is for the president position to get hired first. Again, Chris Kaburek is the interim. Of course, the Board of Regents is going to have to guide through this process as well. And a question I have for you, Bill. I mean, we are going to be in the sports department and our news department. We're going to be hard at work, as we have this morning, trying to find concrete details, trying to reach out to the people we know that are on the inside at the University of Nebraska. We actually haven't been in touch with some people down at Texas A&M as well. And we're trying to get this thing firmed up and get the most accurate and updated information that we can. From a fan's perspective, if this is true, how much will Trev Alberts be villainized?
I mean, I think he will, in the short term, he will be immediately ostracized, in my opinion. I think a lot of people will feel betrayed.
Yeah.
You know, there's the whole loyalty. Again, you would think, you know, you thought 5 or 6 years ago, whenever it was, you hired Scott Frost, native son, the loyalty there. He was going to be the guy to lead us back. That didn't work out. Trev Alberts gets hired. Oh, man, native son. For a long time, it seemed like the athletic department and maybe the football program weren't necessarily pulling in the same direction, and that kind of caused some of the struggles that Nebraska went through. But it finally seemed, especially with President Ted Carter, AD Trev Alberts, and head coach Matt Rule, that everything was pulling in the same direction. You know, the season last year didn't go as, you know, was disappointing in that you were 5-7. But, again, like you said, the arrow is pointed up, I think, across the board. And so to then lose your president, to leave that position open, and then to see your athletic director, again, native son, and all the rest of it, leave for potentially just more money, again, I think there'll be a big sense of betrayal for a lot of people.
It really raises some red flags as to what's going on behind the scenes at the University of Nebraska. If the president left and then the athletic director potentially leaves, like, those are two of the most important people at the University of Nebraska.
And then, like you said, I mean, are you how can you hire an AD without having a president first? And I don't know where that process is in terms of if they're even close to hiring a full-time president. And who do you go get? You know, Trev Alberts was always kind of up in Omaha, so I think there was like, you know, maybe down the road Trev could be the guy. And now it's just like, who's out there? I don't know.
Right. But with one decision, like, the court of public opinion changes completely.
Oh yeah.
On Trev Alberts.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to say he was beloved as Nebraska's athletic director, because he did make some decisions that not everybody agreed with. And plus, college athletics is different now than it was 5 years ago with the transfer portal, with NIL, and just the constant movement within players and also coaches. So I don't think his approval rating would have been 100%.
No.
But it was pretty high. And his boldness to make some decisions, even though they shook the foundation a little bit, I think everybody understood that Trev Alberts was trying to move the athletic department forward, whether it's Memorial Stadium or whether it's taking a volleyball match outside, always trying to move forward. And I think people respected that. And then once it was done, they would appreciate that as well. So the approval rating, because it was what it was, for him to leave, Bill, that's why I posed a question about him being villainized, because I don't know how much this compares to Bill Byrne leaving Nebraska. Again, ironically, a very successful athletic director, and he left for Texas A&M. So in a way, history potentially is repeating itself. I don't know how the public reacted to Bill Byrne's departure. If I understand Nebraska history correctly, like, that was swift and unexpected, and as time has passed, maybe some people understood that. But Bill Byrne did not have the embedded history that Trev Alberts does as a former player at Nebraska.
And I mean, he obviously, again, like we mentioned, he's been so visible at all sporting events. And then again, while maybe a few of his decisions haven't been popular, he's bought himself a lot of grace, because I think a lot of people have seen how active he is in, in trying to move all of these departments forward. And again, like you said, one decision I think is going to erase a lot of that.
Again, to reset, it was reported this morning that, first by the Houston Chronicle, that Trev Alberts was the top choice for Texas A&M for their athletic director position. And in their report, they believed that Trev Alberts would accept it. And at first glance, it seemed like a lot of people this might be a parody account. What? But then TexAgs reports it as well. As I said previously, we've been in contact with, we have a sister station down that covers Texas A&M in Bryan, Texas, and continue to process the information as we can from here and try to learn as much as we possibly can. The University of Nebraska has not said anything publicly. The University of Texas A&M has not said anything publicly. But there are a number of notable media outlets that are reporting this at the moment, that Trev Alberts is in line to become the next athletic director at Texas A&M. It's just weird coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I sat in Trev's office before the final game of the football regular season. And by the way, my interactions with Trev have been outstanding. I feel like he treats me and my media peers with complete respect, with openness. We've had conversations about things that have stayed off the record, and he's trusted me with some information. And he's always friendly to say hello and to ask about me, things at 10-11, my family. There's even one time I was walking out of football practice. I had the tripod on my shoulder and the camera draped on the other one. And, he knows I'm trudging my way to the car, and he's driving off, and he rolls down the window, and boys, behaving yourself, just cracking jokes and just being a good guy.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy to think that was what? Sitting in Trev's office was at the end of November, so that was four months ago. And absolutely zero suspicion at that point in time that he would potentially be leaving his alma mater.
Yeah, and I just want to, it's Brent Zaman with the Houston Chronicle who first reported this. And yeah, you're right. It does just sound weird. Again, it was not on the Wednesday bingo card. I was hoping to come in. I have another school visit I'm going to tomorrow, and I was hoping to kind of get my PowerPoint ready and kind of settled and things like that. And then all of a sudden someone shouted something across the newsroom at 9 o'clock this morning, and it's just kind of gone downhill from there.
Well, it's going to be an active day, so stay tuned to 1011now.com. Of course, we'll have coverage in our newscasts, and we'll try to bring everybody the most updated information that we have. Again, we don't want to jump to any conclusions.
But it's
going to be a day on the phones and a day in front of the screen, and a day putting the words on the paper and trying to make our reports as accurate and up to date as possible.
Seismic development for the University.
Like Bill, when I think back to when I've covered multiple athletic director changes at Nebraska, unfortunately. My goodness, I don't want to document all of them, but some of them catch you more than others. And, when Nebraska hired Mike Riley, I remember sitting at my kitchen table, and I got a text that came across my phone, and I was like, it was one of those moments, it just didn't compute.
Mm-hmm.
This morning, when I was informed that Texas A&M was going to hire Trev Alberts or attempt to hire Trev Alberts as its athletic director, it didn't compute. So this is going to be for me professionally, of 20 years of covering the University of Nebraska. This is going to be one of those moments where it's just one of those puzzling, surprising, and one of those moments you just are not going to forget.
No. And before we go, just a little cart before the horse here. Because I know before Alberts was hired, there was some, maybe John Cook take that AD spot.
John Cook's been very outspoken about when he was thinking about the athletic director position, but he really was unsure whether he'd be good at that job. And, he kind of reinvented his role as Nebraska's volleyball coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's been so much at peace with where he is professionally and the role he's in, and being able to coach in 2023, 24 now. It's a whole different game. I think he's in a good space. I would be absolutely stunned if John Cook was Nebraska's next athletic director, if that job comes open. He's getting close to retirement too, Bill.
Maybe an interim. I mean, Tom Osborne kind of take that interim AD role there for a while back in the that was mid 2000s.
Bill, you can't interim athletic director and be a head coach, and this team has a chance to run it back and make the NCAA final again. And I don't know that John, with the work that he's put in, recruiting wise, and putting this team together, and what they have coming up this year, I just don't see a scenario in which John Cook isn't on the bench with the Nebraska volleyball team in 2024.
Yeah.
So that might be the low-hanging fruit of analyzing the potential candidates at Nebraska. Dave Remington served as the interim AD.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
In the gap in which Nebraska had when they were trying to find an athletic director. I believe that was between it was between Eichhorst and Moose. What's Dave Remington up to these days? He might be my first text message right after we're off of here.
And see what's going on.
Goodness gracious.
So a lot going on today. So again, like Kevin said, make sure you keep it tuned, 10, 11, both on air and online through the day. We're going to continue to follow this story. Again, Trev Alberts reportedly going to be leaving the Nebraska athletic director position for the Texas A&M position. We'll keep you updated. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in, for watching. Kevin, appreciate your time as always. Hope everyone has